we've got some new additions, and we've also got it. We've got a
Oh,
tragic,
I took it away.
we got a tragic loss, Ethan. You know,
I took away
it's
your
okay.
momentum.
No, it's okay. It's fine because we got the video out. We got Lamar Stevens in the thumbnail when he was a Spur. But now he's not anymore, as the Spurs announced today that they're waiving Lamar Stevens. I'm sure because they're bringing in Cam Payne. And, you know, if we want to really dive into kind of what we saw in Summer League, and a lot of this depends on who plays point guard. We've texted about this. If Jeremy Sohan plays point guard, then there's probably not a way on the court for Cam Payne minus injuries, at least in the rotation, I mean. But if Sohan is not playing point guard, with Blake still having some work to do, probably needing another year in the G League, or at least splitting time between the NBA and the G League before becoming a full rotational piece, you know, Cam Payne could be the backup point guard to Trey Jones if Trey Jones ends up being the starter. Like I said, a lot of that depends on what Pop does with the lineups, and I feel like my confidence has only been raised that Wembanyama is not going to play the 4, but maybe they surprise us and move a Jeremy Sohan or a Keldon Johnson to the bench, as a lot of people have speculated. I don't think that that's going to be the case, but really, we could sit here and speculate and talk about what I think or what you think, but we're not going to find out until training camp. But I think there's a reason that they cut Lamar Stevens to allow a chance to have Cam Payne on the roster because of Blake still needing that work and progression. And in our last video that we did, Ethan, we talked about the 2 guys out of that group that were most likely to get on the roster. It was Shetty Osman and Reggie Bullock. So if one guy was going to go out of that group, as much as I said, and I still stand by this, I liked Lamar Stevens' highlights. You know, I thought he was much better than I expected after going and watching him after just hearing his name. It still seems like this was the, when you have those 3 forwards and you're in the situation the Spurs are in, where you have already got a lot of other young wings, you bring in Shetty and Reggie.
Yeah, it felt inevitable. As much as we liked him, as much as he kind of fit the timeline, it's just the other 2 guys were much better at this point in their careers, especially as a fit with the Spurs. Rotationally, I have no idea what's going to be. I don't even want to guess what it's going to be. I don't think we will know until October 4th or whatever the first preseason game is, when Pop rolls out the starters. And oh, okay, so this is what it is. That's when we will know. A lot of people have a lot of different opinions. Some people think Cam Payne should start at point guard. I saw that on Twitter yesterday and today. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it'll be between Trey or Jeremy. But I like Cameron Payne. I mean, we basically swapped a second and then added Cam Payne and cash.
So and got a pick swap, an unprotected pick swap in 2030.
There we go. I mean, we basically fleeced them. And we both agreed, and I think a lot of our commenters agreed, that we needed to bring in, or we wanted to bring in, a veteran point guard presence. We flirted with the idea of Chris Paul when he was available. We flirted with the idea of bringing back Georgie on a minimum contract, but we got Cameron Payne. And I think he does a lot of the same things that both of those players would have done, primarily leadership. But also, he's still a viable option. I mean, if you watched Phoenix last year, he was an important piece to their playoff run.
He's gotten reps in multiple different... Since Phoenix has been playoff relevant, he has been a part... He's been their bench point guard. And that's not saying he's perfect, but for a young Spurs team that's trying to build into a contender, there's a lot of value, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of experience that he can bring to this team. But the interesting thing is Devontae Graham's still on the roster.
He is. He is.
That's I'm forgetting about that. So, but he could also just end up being the 3rd string guy. It's all going to depend on what they do with the rotations.
I would take Cam Payne. I don't think this is going out on a limb or anything.
No, you're
I would
not.
take
You're
Cam
not.
Payne over Devontae at the backup point.
Because
I was watching a lot of Cam Payne highlights today. I know it's something that's kind of funny to say. There weren't that many videos out there. So if you like making highlight videos and you want to be unique, go make a Cam Payne highlight video. Anyway, Cam Payne, he's a really solid player in the pick and roll. Like, as far as finding bigs, running to the rim, and finding the open guy on the weak side corner, he's got some vision there. And there were times, I know Chris Paul's like 39 years old, but there were times last year and even the year prior that they chose to play Cam Payne in crunch time over Chris Paul because he just was more of a viable option. He had better legs. He was, whatever the case may be, Monty Williams thought he was a better option than Chris Paul, who's a Hall of Famer. So I think he can bring a lot to our team. To sum up, I'm excited to have him on the squad. He answers a definite need for us at that backup point guard spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to just look up Cam Payne's shooting percentage as of last year.
He's got a weird jump shot, but it goes in.
That's exactly what I was trying to. Yeah, it's actually oh no, it's not as well. 37%. 37%. So good. Not. That's pretty. That's around kind of. I didn't think it was world beating, but I also thought he was a pretty solid shooter. And I had that image kind of the lefty jump shot in my head too. But most of the times, all lefties can shoot regardless of how the shot looks. So yeah, I mean, there's not really too much else to say on Cam Payne. He will most likely, if he makes the roster, compete for a backup point guard role. What a riveting thought there, Ethan.
And
groundbreaking.
God forbid we have injuries.
No, okay, but that's actually that is a legitimate. That's a great point. But in order to get rid of Cam Payne, we cut Lamar Stevens, which we already talked about. But I think he's worth a second mention.
Agreed. And on a serious note, like legitimately, I forgot to say, Cam Payne's also another. I think it's our 6th or 7th expiring contract.
Yes. Yeah. So there's a lot of expiring contracts, a lot of second-round picks that we've got. I mean, just a ton of assets that the Spurs have continually built up.